You know that age-old cliche about live sports and being unable to write a script like it for a Hollywood film? You couldn't write a script like that, you mean? Aye, that's the one. Well, that cliche applies to the F1 2021 season. A straight shootout in Abu Dhabi between Lewis Hamilton and Max Verstappen to be crowned F1 World Champion for the 2021 season. Both drivers coming into the final race at Abu Dhabi on 369 and a half points. That point 0.5 pisses me off and it's unesthetically pleasing. Could it have been better scripted? Amid all this, F1 is about racing. We want to see a nice, clean, fair fight to determine this year's champion. So we must address the elephant in the room. And it's not Max Verstappen's wheel-to-wheel racing. Please don't bite, Verstappen fans. I am talking about the policing of the rules by the stewards and the FIA race director Michael Masi. Whilst there have been it's all about letting them race, there have been some strong inconsistencies in how they have policed the racing this season. And after the Saudi Arabian Grand Prix, the issue of policing the rules was a big topic. Whilst you can't directly compare incidents, for example, you can't compare what happened at Silverstone between Hamilton and Verstappen to what happened at Interlagos between the same pair. You know, different type of corner, speed, fuel loads, blah blah blah, too many variables. I do feel that between the title contenders at least, the consequences of the championship must be playing a massive factor. This idea of not wanting to ruin the spectacle of this amazing championship battle, you don't want this decided by a steward or a penalty, but there has to be a line drawn on what is legal and what is over the limit, what's illegal. Would the rest of the grid get the same treatment? My honest opinion is no. We saw at Austria earlier in the year where penalties were given out left and right and centre for running a driver off the track. But when Verstappen done it at Interlagos, he escaped a penalty. And as I said, it is difficult to directly compare the incidents due to the variables involved. There has to be a baseline or a foundation in place to judge said incidents. And at the race in Saudi Arabia, it had everyone in uproar about how they managed it. Hell, it even united Hamilton and Verstappen fans together against the FIA. Now, if you ask me, I personally believe the track wasn't fit for purpose. I mean, a street circuit with 27 corners and that 79% full throttle, asking for carnage. We've got a stop-start circus thanks to the layout of the track, but also the policing of the race. Bottas wasn't punished for driving very slowly under the safety car. And was the Mick Schumacher crash red flag worthy? I know it's safety first, but usually a red flag is pulled out straight away, if it's deemed to be red flag worthy. The pile up on the second start was definitely red flag worthy, and thankfully no one was hurt, as that incident could have been easily a lot worse. But off that first red flag restart, we had our first Max versus Lewis moment where Verstappen left the track and gained an advantage coming into T1 and onto T2. And when the red flag occurred, the strangest thing of negotiating their starting grid position for the second red flag restart. What? I mean, it definitely wasn't helped by the fact that Ocon managed to take advantage and get involved in between Lewis and Max. But negotiating grid positions, well, that was a first for me. I mean, if Red Bull didn't take the offer, what was going to happen? A time penalty? It was bizarre, to say the least. I mean, what was this? Formula One? The pinnacle of motorsport? Or Noel Edmonds presenting Deal or No Deal? But what came next, however? Whew. So when Hamilton tried to pass Verstappen on lap 37, Verstappen forced himself and Hamilton to run off the track. Hamilton tried to make turn one to an extent, but Verstappen he didn't bother. He was going in too quick into turn one, and it was pretty obvious that he was going to be told to give that place back because he's gained an advantage by going off the track. But what happened next was utterly bizarre, crazy, and dangerous. Verstappen ended up brake testing Hamilton in the second DRS zone heading into turn 27. Whilst there was space for Hamilton to go past on the left or the right, it was the gamesmanship to get the DRS onto the pit straight. Plus, Verstappen's awkward positioning of the car on the track, I believe. I mean, he could have gone left, way off the racing line, or he could have stayed on the racing line and Hamilton could have just had a simpler path. But he's parked the car in the middle of the track and it was awkward. When Verstappen eventually let Hamilton pass on lap 42, he re-overtook him immediately, and then he immediately got a 5-second penalty for that lap 37 gaining an advantage incident. And the only other time I can recall someone letting someone pass and then re-overtaking them immediately was actually Hamilton at Spa 2008. And the outcome of that was Hamilton getting a 30-second penalty after the race, putting him behind Massa, who finished P2 on the track that day and 28 seconds behind. So that was a bit convenient. Eventually, Verstappen let Hamilton pass, although Hamilton forced Verstappen off the track and in doing so escaped punishment. You know, there's glaring inconsistencies here. Eventually, Hamilton opened up a 6-second gap to win the race, but the application of the rulebook was abysmal. Yes, we got an exciting and dramatic product, but the racing was a mess. The fact Verstappen only got a 10-second time penalty for brake testing Hamilton is actually quite a dangerous precedent to set, as I believe it is not strict enough penalty to fit the crime. Also, the 10-second penalty kept Verstappen in second, so he wasn't affected by it, and the idea of the spectacle must go out the window when it comes to making these decisions. If Verstappen was given a stronger penalty, people would be complaining about the FIA bias towards Mercedes, and it can be argued the other way around as well, vice versa. If Mazepin or any other driver had done what Verstappen done, I think people would be clamouring for a disqualification. Okay, maybe that's a stretch. Maybe some people would be clamouring for a DQ, but let's face it, they'd be clamouring for a stricter penalty, and the FIA and the stewards probably would have viewed it differently. I've always felt that in F1 the rules are applied differently for the title contenders and the rest of the grid. I mean, Charles Leclerc said after the Verstappen-Hamilton flashpoint in Brazil that depending on the outcome of that, he would adapt his driving because he knows what is perceived to be legal and fair driving. You know, I mean, in theory, with what happened in Brazil, technically you are able to run someone off the road and don't get penalised for it. So, and you know, with the current rules of engagement, whatever they are, I don't even know, mainly between Hamilton and Verstappen, I don't want to say this, but I also wouldn't be surprised if we got another Prost Senna or Hill Schumacher incident where they both retire Verstappen knows he wins the title and count that due to having more wins. But I don't think Verstappen's going to do that. But there is a fear that Max knows he has the advantage going into Abu Dhabi, and he's not going to take Lewis out on purpose. And if he does, there's a precedent set with that in '97 with Schumacher and Villeneuve, and Schumacher got disqualified from the World Championship. So I don't think Max will do that. I think I hope it's going to be a fair fight at Abu Dhabi. But Verstappen is a hard racer, but you always have to be more cautious and careful around him as he doesn't yield. We saw this at lap 1 at Imola, Catalonia and Monza. But he does this as he also knows that that's
all about letting them race.
Means you can be a bit more aggressive, but they're failed to police where the limits are, and there's a grey area that we find ourselves talking about. We find ourselves talking about stewards, penalties and Michael Massey more than the race itself. Like Verstappen pulled off a beautiful move on the second red flag restart to take the lead ahead of Ocon and Hamilton. But we're not speaking about it. We're speaking about the penalties, the decision makings and the policing of the rules. I am not saying I or any social media expert is going to do a better job than Michael Massey. Hell, I don't even have a driving license, and the only driving I do is on the F1 video game. But something needs to be done on the rules of engagement before Abu Dhabi. Otherwise, there is a fear that it could get ugly, as Toto Wolff put it. And that is not the ending that this title fight deserves. That is my opinion on the enforcement and interpretation of the rule book. You might think I'm chatting a lot of crap, which I probably am. You might not. Comment below if you want. Also, who's going to win the title? I personally believe, and I said this a couple of weeks ago, Hamilton has the momentum, and I feel Verstappen's temperament is catching up with him. Like the video, subscribe, follow me on Twitter. Only do those if you want. But have a good rest of your day. Peace.